This man is named Pierre. He serves as the personal chef of a French nobleman, the Duke of Chamfort. Pierre is a widower, and he and his son Benjamin have been working in a magnificent palace for years. While Pierre was busy supervising the cooking, a palace maid named Hyacinth conveyed the message that the Duke and his guests enjoyed the food Pierre had prepared that day. They even requested Pierre to make another meal. To avoid disappointing the Duke, Pierre asked one of the chefs to deliver a new dish he had made, called the delicia, or delicious in English. In the 18th century, there were many ways that nobles used to show how rich and classy they were, such as wearing fine clothes, building luxurious palaces, and showcasing the exquisite cooking of their private chefs. During the meal, the Duke called Pierre over to hear the guests' comments about his latest dish. One by one, the guests praised it. Unfortunately, one guest disliked it, and said that the food tasted like rubbish, only suitable for pigs. Hearing the insult, everyone laughed out loud. Feeling his noble pride wounded by Pierre's cooking, the Duke shouted and demanded that Pierre kneel and apologize. However, as a chef with his own pride, Pierre could not accept his cooking being insulted, despite his many years of service. Rather than apologizing, Pierre and Benjamin chose to leave the palace and return to Pierre's father's house. When they arrived in the evening, they found it partially destroyed. Pierre's father's neighbor, Jacob, informed them that several months ago, Pierre's father had died from a serious illness. The poor people who used to come for bread were disappointed, as there was no more free food after his father's death. They had ransacked the house searching for food. With nowhere else to stay, Pierre and Benjamin had to sleep in a makeshift shelter that night. The next day, after cleaning up, a man came to eat at Pierre's house. Previously, Pierre's house was known as a resting place for weary travelers who paid whatever they could for food. Pierre was in the warehouse, so Benjamin was the one cooking for the man. While in the warehouse, Pierre was approached by a woman named Louise. She was also a cook, and told Pierre that all the cooks in the country knew of Pierre's greatness. Upon hearing about Pierre from a friend that morning, she had quit her job to learn from him. Unfortunately, Pierre refused to teach her outright. That evening at dinner, Benjamin asked his father why he didn't apply to be a private chef at another noble's palace. He believed that if the nobles tasted his father's cooking, they would be hooked. Pierre explained that, after working in the palace kitchen for decades, it felt like home to him. He was just upset at the moment, but if the Duke asked him to return, Pierre would go back. It's raining, and Louise was waiting outside Pierre's place. The next morning, Pierre saw Louise in the warehouse, and she begged him to teach her how to cook, willing to pay whatever it took for him to accept her as a student. Initially, Pierre didn't want to teach Louise because, at that time, women were not considered appropriate to be chefs. However, Louise's perseverance impressed Pierre, and he finally agreed to teach her. As days went by, Louise continued to learn how to serve guests, help with washing, and take care of Pierre's farm. After that, Pierre asked Louise to serve wine to the guests. The first snow was falling, signaling the arrival of winter. Benjamin caught a rabbit, and Jacob told him that one's first rabbit was important, giving him something special to commemorate the moment. When Louise had just come in, Pierre suddenly said, "Winter is gone, but the thief is still hungry." While looking out of the window, Louise looked confused and then glanced outside as well. She caught some children from the orphanage stealing flour. Louise questioned if Pierre was encouraging theft, but he explained he was buying peace by trading bread for flour to prevent starving children from stealing. Hearing this, Louise smiled happily. While making bread, Pierre asked why Louise inflicted this on herself. He could see she was trying hard, but those hands weren't used to working hard. Based on his observations, Pierre deduced from her way of walking that she was either a noblewoman or a courtesan. He was disappointed that Louise lied to him. Louise chased after Pierre, confessing she was a courtesan trying to change her life after her father's death left her in debt. She had decided to change and become a great chef to prove she deserved a second chance. Well, here's a spoiler. That wasn't her job. Keep watching to find out who Louise really was. Pierre, initially upset and skeptical, agreed to teach her, impressed by her honesty and determination. He took Louise to the forest and told her to look for edible plants. When they returned home, he explained which plants were edible and which were poisonous. That evening, he taught her about various spices and cooking ingredients. To train her sense of taste, Pierre had her close her eyes and fed her different food ingredients one by one. Over time, Pierre became captivated by Louise's beauty and, carried away by the moment, nearly kissed her. Suddenly, Louise opened her eyes, immediately put a knife to his neck, and ran away from him. The next morning, Louise was serving 2 guests at Pierre's house. To ease the awkwardness, Pierre tried to talk to her. He apologized for his actions the previous night and promised it wouldn't happen again. Fortunately, Louise forgave him, and they both agreed to put the incident behind them. A few days later, the Duke's envoy, Hyacinth, came to Pierre's house with a message. In 2 weeks, the Duke would host a dinner party to welcome his new friends from Paris, and he wanted to hold the event at Pierre's house. The messenger assured Pierre not to worry, as servants would be sent to help decorate the place to make it luxurious and suitable for nobles. Before leaving, he asked Pierre to prepare the best dish because if the Duke was satisfied, he might appoint Pierre as his personal chef again. Pierre accepted the offer. The following day, Pierre enthusiastically discussed the decorations and menu for the party with Benjamin, Louise, and Jacob. Soon after, servants from the palace arrived with the ordered food ingredients. A week later, Pierre, Benjamin, Louise, and Jacob shared a delightful dinner outside the house, enjoying and praising Pierre's cuisine. They shared love and laughter, strengthening their bond. The next morning, Louise suggested setting the table before travelers arrived to make them feel welcomed and willing to pay more, and Pierre agreed with her plan. Just then, the Duke's envoy arrived with a letter. Pierre was surprised by the event being moved up to the next day. He doubted he could prepare everything in time, but Louise assured him confidently that it would be ready. As the messenger departed, Pierre scolded Louise for interfering despite not being the one cooking. In the midst of their argument, they heard the sound of barrels falling. They were shocked to find that Jacob had been struck by one of the barrels and was seriously injured. Sadly, Jacob passed away. After his funeral, Pierre instructed everyone to return to work, emphasizing the need to finish preparations to ensure the event ran smoothly. That night, Pierre continued cooking, unconcerned about the state of the kitchen as long as the food was ready before the Duke's party arrived. When Pierre checked the pudding in the warehouse, Benjamin was there. Annoyed, Benjamin asked why his father was still cooking despite Jacob's recent death. Did his father's feelings die along with Jacob? Pierre responded that not shedding tears didn't mean he wasn't grieving, but with so much left to do, he simply didn't have time to cry. During the argument, Benjamin accidentally knocked over the oil, and a fire broke out. After putting out the fire, Louise treated Pierre's burned hand. Feeling disheartened and worried, Pierre doubted they could be ready in time, especially with his injury making cooking difficult. Louise encouraged him, reminding him they had 9 hours left. All Pierre had to do was believe in Louise. The next morning, they began cooking together. Pierre was amazed to see how seriously Louise listened to his instructions. Shortly after, palace servants arrived and began decorating Pierre's yard. While everyone was occupied, Louise secretly poisoned one of the dishes. Just as the preparations were completed, the Duke's group arrived at Pierre's house. Strangely, instead of stopping, the group of nobles continued on their way, leaving everyone confused. After that incident, Pierre received a letter stating that the party was cancelled. The letter said the Duke couldn't wait to eat, so they stopped at an inn a few miles back for food. After hearing what the letter said, Louise was so angry that she broke the decorations. Her anger turned to concern when she saw Benjamin about to eat the poisoned food, and she quickly threw it away. Pierre became suspicious of Louise's strange behavior. When they were alone, he forced Louise to confess. Under all that pressure, Louise couldn't keep her secret any longer. She had sought to become Pierre's student to exact revenge on the man who had ruined her life. Before meeting Pierre, Louise was the wife of a wealthy nobleman who was a business partner of the Duke. The Duke had fallen in love with Louise and tried to seduce her. When Louise rejected his advances, the Duke behaved maliciously. He ended the life of her husband and seized all the wealth in their house. Afterwards, Louise vowed to get revenge. Hearing this story, Pierre was very disappointed and asked Louise to leave. The next day, Benjamin tried to prevent Louise from leaving. Pierre, still disheartened, tried to calm himself down but fell, and was dragged by his horse due to his poor riding skills. As a result of this incident, Louise chose not to leave and stayed to take care of Pierre, day and night tending to his needs without pause. She ensured Pierre received the attention and support he needed during his recovery. One day, after Pierre's wounds had healed, he heard a commotion outside. When he checked, he saw many soldiers eating at his house. Louise explained that a group of soldiers had passed by and asked for food. Taking the initiative, she had cooked for them using Pierre's recipes. The soldiers enjoyed the food so much that they paid extra. Feeling overwhelmed, Louise hired children from the orphanage to help. After the soldiers left, Louise revealed that selling delicious food was more profitable than only cooking for nobles. She suggested opening a place where people from all walks of life could eat and be served like nobles. Initially, Pierre disagreed and again kicked Louise out, but Benjamin reminded him how Louise had cared for him while he was sick. Pierre fell silent. Benjamin also argued that this could be their chance to take revenge for what the Duke did to them, and prove they could earn more than Pierre's salary as a private chef. Benjamin was convinced that people would embrace the idea of opening such an eatery in the future. Pierre finally came around and agreed. The day after tomorrow, after finishing decorating the dining area, Pierre instructed Louise to create a daily menu. To keep customers interested, they had to change the menu every day. Shortly afterward, Benjamin rushed in to announce that customers were coming, marking the start of their dining business, the first of its kind in France. Pierre's business was getting busier. One day, the palace maid came to collect tax money from Pierre's dining place. They were talking when Louise accidentally walked in. Afraid that she would be recognized and reported, Louise hastily covered her face with a clothes basket and left. Standing behind the wall, she realized her desire for revenge against the Duke was reignited when she saw his personal servant. Louise, fearing she might harm the Duke and tarnish Pierre's name, decided to leave. She wrote a farewell letter in case Pierre would be concerned. Reading the letter, Pierre felt blue. In the following days, Pierre struggled to focus on cooking, but frequently made mistakes, overcooking dishes, mixing up orders, and serving food that didn't taste good. As a result, the restaurant began to lose its customers. At some point, Pierre learned they didn't have enough money for food. Benjamin advised his father that their restaurant would succeed if he kept his composure, noting that people come for delicious food, not to see him gloomy over a woman. In the evening, Pierre visited the Duke's palace and mentioned that since leaving his job there, he had opened a restaurant. Lately, however, the restaurant had been empty of visitors. The Duke arrogantly said that Pierre's decision was foolish, stating that only nobles could truly appreciate delicious food. Common people would never understand its quality. Frustrated with the situation, Pierre apologized and admitted that the Duke might be right. Nevertheless, if the Duke didn't mind, Pierre wanted to invite him to dine at his establishment the day after next. Upon hearing the offer, the Duke agreed, on the condition that after dining there, Pierre would close his restaurant and return to work at the palace. The next morning, with the information he had gathered, Pierre finally located Louise, who had become a nun. When they met, he told her the Duke would visit his restaurant the next day and proposed poisoning him together, no longer caring about his reputation or death. Pierre's priority was having Louise back by his side. Touched by Pierre's confession, Louise considered returning home with him. They were on the verge of kissing when Mother Superior interrupted them, disrupting their moment. The next day, the Duke and his wife showed up at Pierre's place. Pierre greeted them warmly and asked them to come in. He served them an appetizer. Can you guess what it was? Yup, it was le delicia, the dish that the nobles had said was only good enough for pigs. The Duke was offended, but seeing his wife truly enjoying the food, he reluctantly decided to taste it. Just as he was about to take a bite, Hyacinth interrupted, informing him that many ordinary people had arrived and were sitting on the available chairs. The Duke, unwilling to dine with commoners, prepared to leave until Louise appeared. She revealed her plan to poison him, but thought public humiliation was better. Pierre showed invitations he had distributed for dining with the Duke, and people started talking about the Duke, deeply embarrassing him. The Duke vowed revenge, but Louise threatened to report his misdeeds to the King of France, revealing she had evidence that could lead to his execution. Louise removed the fake wig symbolizing nobility in front of everyone. When the Duke tried to strike her, Pierre intervened, forcing him to apologize. The Duke was left speechless and stiff with embarrassment. Tears filled his eyes as he ran away, with his wife following closely behind. Hyacinth, who had served the Duke for many years, was shocked by his despicable behavior. In the midst of the confusion, 2 new guests arrived and asked if there was an empty table for them. Hyacinth realized the error of his ways and removed the wig that symbolized the Duke's personal servant, deciding to assist in serving the people who came to Pierre's restaurant. And that was the story of the former private chef having a restaurant business in France. The movie, set in 1789, tells the story of one of the earliest restaurants. It's loosely based on real events, since the first known restaurant in Paris, La Grande Taverne de Londres, actually opened a few years earlier. The film does a great job of mixing this historical setting with the French Revolution, making for an engaging backdrop that ties in the period's spirit of change and the birth of modern dining.